hope you enjoy the session. And on that note, I want to welcome our first panel discussing the implementation of MiCA, now that it's finally here. So from Kraken, Beata, from Chainalysis, Matthias, and from the IMF, Marianne. Please, guys.
Hi everyone. Just very quickly, a couple of remaining points. You will see a QR code on screen. That's to access the web app for the summit. You have obviously the agenda, but also the full list of attendees, so you can also see who's next to you in the room. And just wanted to also remind you, thank you for the QR code, of a couple of side events that we have this year. So tomorrow morning, don't forget to put on your running shoes and join the TRM Labs Run Club at 7:30, just before the start of the program, so make sure to sign up to that. And we also have a session on DORA, the Digital Operational Resilience Act, tomorrow, so make sure to register to that if you're interested to participate. Thanks everyone, and let's have a great Blockchain for Europe Summit. Thank you.
Thanks, Tommy. He will, by the way, be our MC today, so he's much more entertaining than me. And on that note, guys, MiCA is coming. I think we all worked a lot on making this work. All the regulators did a great effort. All the industry, I think, contributed. Commission safeguarded what they put forward. And now that it's here, what does it mean for the industry, Beata? Why does it matter? And what's your key takeaway looking at it as of today?
Yeah, hi everyone, good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here. So first about Kraken, I'm sure you all know us well, but we're one of the oldest, most resilient exchanges out there. We've been around over 13 years, which is quite a lot in the crypto years. We currently hold a number of licenses and registrations globally. This includes, of course, the EU as well. These are VASP registration and EMI license as well. And for us, MiCA is a real game changer. It's a door opener. It's somewhat a simplifier of the things we do. We have supported MiCA from day one, and I think there's a lot of things in MiCA that we like. There are some things I was asked to say what we like and what we don't like. So I would say there are things we like, and then there are things that we still have some questions about, rather put it like that, or some unknowns. So I think the things that we do like is, as I already mentioned, MiCA will simplify the work that we do by providing a clear path to licensing. So one license to rule them all, passportable across all the EU member states. I think that's something that we really welcome. I think what's also good in MiCA is that it's not entirely new, right? It still builds on some of the well-established principles and tested things that were out there in traditional finance. You know, you take MiFID, you take market abuse and other kind of principles. Those are still there, and they have been just carried over to crypto, maybe to some extent simplified, or to some extent made fit to this kind of new and innovative market. So these are all things that we like. Frankly, we also like that MiCA is quite heavy on the level 2, level 3, and that's a bit strange maybe for a company to say that we like a lot of level 2, level 3. But what does it mean in practice? This means in practice that there has been a 1.5 year of a very extensive work on a kind of level 2 and level 3. That means we've had the time to learn, and the regulators have had time to learn as well. So, the work was really not finalized with the level 1. So this time has really allowed us to come closer to regulation, and the regulators come closer to us. So I think these are all the kind of things that are positive and good. I think the unknowns, or the kind of questions we have, are not so much related to the design of MiCA, because the things we like are really mostly about the design of MiCA. It's about how MiCA actually comes alive, right? We are here sitting literally days from the go live. So I think this is a very, very important topic. And I think you can have the most beautiful design and the best regulation in the world, but if it's not implemented correctly and if it's not brought to life correctly, it can still sort of lead to bad outcomes, right? So I think that implementation is still a big question for us. And what I mean concretely by that, implementation is kind of, let's say before the firms get licensed, you know, companies like Kraken, hopefully, there is a lot of work happening there. There is a very strange piece in MiCA where each member state had a discretion to decide when to actually, you know, end the transitional period. This is really unique. You don't find this in any other traditional finance pieces of legislation, at least that I'm aware of. So having the kind of transitional period at the discretion of member states brings a little bit of unevenness, right? MiCA was there to be the equalizer, to sort of put everybody at the same starting point, but actually how we see things developing with the implementation, the industry will not be at the same starting point on the 1st of January next year. You know, where you are will very much depend sort of which member state you choose as your home member state. And I think that could be potentially problematic, right? So that's kind of like the let's say pre-licensing. But that sort of carries over actually into the after you get your license, right? Because so much of MiCA depends also on the supervisory culture of the member state, again, the member state you choose, you know. And again, we see that from traditional finance, you know, the way that different regulations have been implemented across different member states differs, you know. Despite the best effort of regulators, there is something that is called supervisory culture, and that genuinely is different. So I think these are the things that we sort of have some questions about. Do we have a solutions for that? Yes and no, partially. I think it's really about a dialogue with the regulators, and particularly we always look towards ESMA, you know, and I think they have done a great work in terms of really, you know, promoting supervisory convergence. They came out with, you know, all tools and all guns blazing. So we very much support that. But yeah, we do have questions about how this is going to actually materialize in reality in a couple of days. Thanks.
Thanks, Beata. Matthias, when you look at it from a Chainalysis perspective, right? You're dealing a lot with blockchain analytics, with data. What does the data say about the preparation in Europe for MiCA? And also, do you see something that shows that there's traction coming into Europe because of MiCA?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Matthias. I'm from Chainalysis, a blockchain analytics company you probably are aware of. What we do is we map on-chain transactions to real-world entities for investigative purposes, also compliance purposes, and we deal a lot with data. We love data and we love charts and slides, so we also think about MiCA and what actually changes in on-chain transactions, which are mutable, and they are data that is not reported, it's just out there, so really interesting to see. I agree with Beata, you know, the proof is in the pudding. How MiCA will be implemented will change the way it will function in practice. And we are still at a point where we don't have full applicability. But of course, the stablecoin regime is already live and for a few months. So we looked into transactional activity around stablecoins and particularly around European or EU euro-denominated stablecoins lately. And there's actually three things that I found extremely interesting. And again, you know, we're just at the beginning, and when I talk about data, it's all about on-chain activity. We don't actually look into what happens at centralized exchanges. That's a different world, and you know, there's ways to combine it, but we're really looking at on-chain transactions. And when we look at on-chain transactions, it was quite interesting to see that before MiCA, euro-denominated stablecoins were hovering around 200 million of transactional value per month in Europe, which is not a lot compared to the rest. Stablecoin markets are very much US dollar denominated and dominated by specifically two stablecoins, and MiCA hasn't changed that. But what we saw since July 2024, so since the advent of MiCA, is that the transactional level has risen massively from around 200 million per month to now a staggering, and I had to double check this figure 3 times because I couldn't believe it myself. In November, euro-denominated stablecoins had a transactional volume of more than $5 billion worth. So we've gone from 200 million in euro-denominated stablecoins all the way, basically doubling all the time, to 5.2 billion in transactional value, which is amazing. So it really shows you that euro stablecoins are getting more adopted and more used. And this also brings me to the sector mainly driven by circles EUROC or EURC, to be honest. When you look at a second stat, so this is transactional value, it has shot up massively. When you look at the type of transactions, you also see something interesting. I'm talking about transaction sizes. Typically before MiCA, and this is true of like global stablecoin transactions more broadly, the main transactional size is around 10,000 up to 1 million, which we call professional sizes. Also, in euro-denominated stablecoins, you had this transaction type, this transaction size really dominating the market, up to 90%. Since MiCA and since June, we see that there is much more diversification within the sizes of transactions. So there's more transactions above 10 million, for example, but really, really importantly, we see much more transactions in the retail-sized market, so up to 10,000. And there's even a massive surge in transactions below 1,000 US dollars, which to me indicates diversification of different use cases, probably even different users in European, in EU, euro-denominated stablecoins. So really interesting to see that. And then the third thing that I found was interesting is when you look at the type of services that interact with euro-denominated stablecoins. So who's actually behind those transactions? Is it exchanges? Is it usage in DeFi? Is it self-hosted wallets? And when you look at those three characteristics, it actually stands out that 83%, if you look at Circle's Europe, 83%, which leads the market at the moment, 83% have been transactions from self-hosted wallets, which indicates a high level of self-custody, of probably more user sophistication, different types of use cases, but also the fact that it's actually used for value transfer, so as a transactional medium, probably as a means of payment, rather than being only used at an exchange for trading pairs. That's really interesting. The other part is DeFi. When you look at DeFi interactions, euro-denominated stablecoins only account for all the transactions. The part for DeFi is only around 5%. So DeFi activity is still very much driven by US dollar-denominated stablecoins. So this is roughly where we are at the moment. We see much more transactional volume. In European and EU, euro-denominated stablecoins, we see the transaction sizes changing, and we also see a lot of self-hosted wallet interactions at the moment from an on-chain transactional perspective.
Thanks, Matthias, for the outline. I think it's always good to know the data to what we're talking about, right? That's often forgotten, that's actually what matters. Coming to something else that matters, IMF, Marianne, you're one of the key regulators in Europe. When it comes to the implementation of MiCA, France plays a very important role in Europe, especially in this space. When you look at MiCA now and the past months since it entered into force with the stablecoins regime, what did you see that, or what do you rather expect that will happen once the whole package is in place? What is the preparations that you made? What is the message that you want to convey to the market, and what can we change, what should happen, and ups and downsides?
So, hello everyone. So I think we need to take a step back now and just first say that at the IMF, and in France more globally, we have long hoped for this EU framework around crypto assets. We've had some experience in France with the PACT law, which was enacted a couple of years ago, so we have some experience, but I think it did not make sense to have just one national framework, because we are talking about crypto assets, we are talking about digital industry, so we put in place a minimal framework in France, hoping that then Europe will come up with something at EU level, and MiCA is now about to enter into application, and this is a very positive step for us. So I think we need to think to stop here and say that we are very happy with MiCA. We are aware that there are some things to clarify, and I will talk about what is ahead of us now at the AMF. But yeah, first, in terms of investor protection, I think this is a very positive step. We have been working on the level 1 with the French Treasury when the text was being negotiated. we brought our expertise to the French Treasury because we had this experience with the national law, and then we brought also this expertise at ESMA. To be honest, crypto assets is quite new for ESMA, and so I think they were relying on national supervisors with experience around crypto assets to draft smart, or at least rules that would work in the level 2 and the level 3. So this has been very important work in the last couple of months, and perhaps I will talk afterwards what is ahead of us, because now that the rules are being drafted, I think we really need to think about convergence in the supervision, and this would be a key challenge. We are aware of the fact that this is not perfect, the fact that there are differences between member states, like for example in the transitional period. This is not ideal, but it's what it is, and now we need to think about how we can apply the rules in a way that it converge among member states. This is key for market players. This is also key for us, and I will say a word perhaps afterwards on what we are concretely doing at ESMA level on that.
Yeah, actually, that would be great to know. So if you could outline that a bit more, that would be, I think, very interesting.
Yeah, so what we are working right now at ESMA, so we bring our expertise. I would say perhaps a few words on the national framework we have in France. So as you may know, I'm pretty sure that everyone knows, but I will just explain that. In France, we have, I would say, a mandatory regime for digital asset service providers who provide certain services, like custody, for example. And this is the mandatory part of our regime, but I think most of our regime is optional. So for other services like advice, for example, or even for issuance of tokens, this is optional. So for us, it means that from an optional framework, we will go with minimal mandatory framework, but mainly optional framework, we'll go for a mandatory framework. This is a huge step. And so I think our work is first to try to explain to our industry to get ready, to prepare for MiCA, and we have done that through a new status in our law that is enhanced registration. It means that for providers who apply for registration, mandatory registration since beginning of July, the requirements are higher. The idea behind that is to make sure that the step to MiCA is smaller, because at national level your standards are being stricter. So we are trying to explain that to our industry. We push them to apply for a licensing, which is optional, but actually if you have a license in France, actually you're closer to MiCA, so the transition is easier. So we have done that at national level, trying to explain the rules, trying to explain to our industry to get ready for MiCA. This is key. And so far we have like more than 100 registered DASP, and then we have, I think, 1 or 2 licensed DASP, so that's not that much. So there is a real challenge here to make sure that our industry is ready for MiCA. And again, this is a real challenge. This was one of the part of the work we have done. Another key part now, and is taking more and more time, is working at ESMA level, because we have been drafting the rules at ESMA level. Now we need to apply in the same manner the rules. And so I would say supervisory convergence is now the key aspect of our work at ESMA. We are trying to apply the rule in the same manner, to understand the rules in the same way. When we will have applications for a CASP license, we need to make sure that we check the same things in the same way. So this is the challenge now we are facing at ESMA level. It does not mean that we will stop drafting or issuing new clarifications. We will do that. ESMA can issue Q&As, ESMA can issue opinions to clarify the rules, and actually it has been already doing that. There has been an opinion a couple of months ago on the brokerage models to explain what is expected when we look at MiCA, what can be done for platforms who have part of their activities outside EU. This is one example of what ESMA can do to clarify how the rules would apply. There has been already some Q&As, and really I encourage all market players to check on the website of ESMA, which is not easy to find, but ESMA is not here, right? But really try to find the link and then keep it in your favorite link on the web, because really this is where you will have many information on how the rules apply. I think now on the AMF website we have put a link to the website of ESMA, so to help you, because now we have a lot of clarification coming from Q&As, again opinions, statements, Q&As, so there will be again clarification, but I think the challenge now is making sure that at ESMA we apply the rule in the same way. Just to give you a bit of details on how it works at ESMA, we have a forum that is called the Digital Finance Standing Committee, that is in charge actually of having this convergence among member states, among national competent authorities, and to be honest, the agenda is pretty much 90% MiCA, talking about convergence. So we are working on that. Perhaps I will say a few words afterwards on what can be done as a next step, but yeah, this is what we have been working right now.
Thanks for that elaborate answer. Beata, you mentioned in your first statement that there are some things you already thought about what could be improved, right? And as you hear and you know, there is a lot of work been done on the European level, also with the input of the Commission, right? They have a view on this as well, obviously. So when you would address that, what would be your key priorities if you could place some?
So I think actually, thank you very much, Marianne, for your intervention here. That was really, I think, music to my ears, or the industry ears, to hear that ESMA is really taking this work head on, because obviously we can really see it from a first-hand experience when we interact with the various NCAs that there is a definitely need for help, and we think that the different NCAs have, different challenges. Some of the challenges there are legal challenges of their own, home member state nature, maybe lack of legislation there in place, lack of designation of the NCA. Some of them are maybe more related to resourcing, right? Some of the NCAs are quite small. And also, obviously that relates to expertise, right? So if we look at the 27 NCAs, we think that MiCA draws a lot on the expertise that we have seen in the capital market space. The capital markets in a number of EU member states are actually not that developed, right? So where do you draw that expertise from, actually? So I think that supervisory convergence work from ESMA and from some of the bigger member states contributing to that makes a lot of sense. I think in terms of what we would want now, I think is just really give industry some time to digest. I think everybody that is here wants to do it right and wants to get there in time. I think that, you mentioned European Commission. I think everybody is sort of wondering, does MiCA actually work as it is right now? Should we look into redesigning it or changing it, things like that? I don't want to make a put any spoilers here, because there is a panel tomorrow with one of my colleagues talking about why we don't need MiCA 2.0 yet. So I don't want to put any spoilers there, but I think the key is really just give industry the time to digest and keep the dialogue open. We're always there, and we're always sort of ready to provide more input. I mean, I can talk about what MiCA, what trends we see across the industry, but I'm also conscious of time, so yeah, I'll leave it there.
Maybe if I can add one more point here, give industry time, yes. But also as a former regulator, I would also say give regulators some time to adjust, because it's not only financial regulators who have had interactions in the past with crypto assets. There's also all sorts of other different entities and supervisors who were previously in charge of registering VASPs. So it wasn't even the financial services regulator who was in charge of overseeing these types of activities. And they are different to financial services markets and traditional markets. And the one thing that we argue is it's good that they are different, because blockchains have got a certain type of transparency that actually helps supervisors to do their job more efficiently if they have the right analytical tools. But it also helps firms a lot to show that they can actually have effective policies in place, and they can show their actions in blockchain transactions. So they've actually got proof of that. And as a third point, there is also, blockchain analytics is obviously changing as well as, it's criminal activity, illicit activity. but it's getting much more sophisticated, and I think also companies like ours understand much better the use case for supervisors now, and we're working a lot to make sure that our systems work for all parties involved, to enhance blockchain intelligence, to enhance trust in blockchains, and make this space a safer one, including for TradFi businesses, who I think will be much more incentivized with MiCA to come into that space. One more thing that I wanted to briefly mention is there's loads of ways how crypto asset markets differ from traditional financial services markets. But one of the things that we're working on a lot at the moment is market abuse, because that's quite unique, that you have got a crypto asset regulation that also tries to prevent and detect market abusive behavior. And obviously, crypto asset markets are very different to traditional stock markets because they are 24/7, they are global, they are massively fragmented. There's like loads of small cap tokens, and how to effectively address that, where to focus, how to link on-chain transactions to centralized exchange interactions is very, very difficult, because these market abusive behaviors, they don't just happen inside a specific exchange. There's a whole network, a whole ecosystem of transactions that needs to be looked at. So my point is, like, it's not only the industry that needs time to get used to MiCA and to make sure they've got everything it takes to comply and have a compelling business case. It's also regulators who need some time to adapt, to understand new tools, to use them efficiently, focus on the right risks and issues. So I think both sides will need some time going forwards.
Thanks, Matthias. I actually have a follow-up question. You look at the data globally, right? So, and you generally, the whole industry thinks very global. And I think whenever, for example, we travel to non-European conferences and talk about MiCA, that's the first time ever, in my experience, that anybody gets interested or sometimes even excited about regulation in this space, right? And question is always like, does it do anything better? Does it drive businesses here? What's the perception? Based on an industry perspective, and then I would like to have you also answer this from a regulator's perspective. What is the perception of MiCA abroad when you go abroad? Is it something that people ask you about, or they're like, oh God, another hurdle to come to Europe? What do you feel is the way?
So I think, well, when you go abroad, everybody's definitely asking about MiCA. There's no question about that. And I think as an industry, we see a number of impacts. Obviously, it's very challenging to sit next to Chainalysis because I don't have the numbers and I don't have the statistics that Matthias has here. But I think the broad trends that we really see, I would say it's really, the changes come in threefold. So I would describe them first as internal changes that happens to crypto asset markets, so crypto businesses, then the intra businesses, so what happens between the different crypto businesses, and then the kind of changes that demonstrates towards broader market and consumers. So I think internally, as a direct, I would say, result or impact of MiCA, a lot of the firms had to rethink their business models. I think it's a little bit related to what Marianne mentioned as well. It's partially forced by MiCA, but partially also perhaps, it's a business opportunity, right? To rethink how you actually do the business, how do you draw the lines, and what makes sense. So we can definitely see changes inside the crypto industry. Then there are changes in the different sort of partnerships that have been developed, right? You see new partnerships, and not just partnerships, they even translate into like an increased M&A activity. I think whenever you bring regulation, the M&A is always somewhere on the horizon, right? Because you make some crypto businesses potentially more interesting as a target. Once you're regulated, it's probably safer and things like that. So we see that as a second sort of big trend in terms of change, the partnerships and M&A. And finally, there is also how that impacts the offering, right? I think that's a little bit what you also mentioned in terms of like more stable coins coming to the market. So in the end of the day, that's good for consumer as well, right? More choice. So I think these are like the three trends, the internal, the partnerships, and the towards the market that we see here in Europe. And I think that it's in Europe, but it's also actually driving that globally. And I think that's definitely seen in other places that we go to and we travel.
Yeah, I agree with Beata. The one thing that I would add probably is around regulatory discussions with regulators around the globe. They are all very keen to understand MiCA, to understand how it works, how it's technically done. The three different regulatory blocks that we have in there, and there's loads of technical discussions. To some extent, it's already seen as partly success because we already have even two handfuls of stablecoins that are regulated at the moment, sort of proving that you can be compliant and have a compelling business case within the MiCA framework here in Europe. But what everyone's really waiting on is, to Beata's earlier point and also to your point previously, how does MiCA actually play out in practice? So what do we do with non-compliant MiCA, non-MiCA compliant stablecoins? How will regulation, supervision be implemented? How does the market react to it? Will there be just consolidation and you just favor the big ones? Will it be innovation, pro-innovation friendly? All these sorts of questions, I think, are still to be answered. How is TradFi going to react to it? Yeah, there's loads of questions. So I think the world currently is looking at Europe and really with excitement look into the next 6 to 12 months. Yeah, maybe one last point. UK is also obviously a really interesting market, biggest market in Europe geographically, and they are also very, very closely looking at what MiCA does, and I think they will be, or they already are, quite inspired by what MiCA is doing. They changed their approach towards crypto assets and stablecoins and how they want to integrate those. And the digital security sandbox is another example of where they were inspired by what the EU has done and improved on it.
Yeah, I think there are two examples that have been said just before are very good examples of where we need to think at EU level and not only at national level. Stablecoins, unauthorized stablecoins, this is an issue that we are aware of and we need to communicate to the markets on what they can do when they are offering stablecoin that are unauthorized, whereas MiCA has already been enter into application for the stablecoins part. So just to say that at EU level we are aware of this issue and hopefully we will communicate to the market what is expected. And this is very important to give this clarity. Market abuse is also a topic that needs to be tackled at EU level. It doesn't make sense that each member state collect the data and try to monitor market abuse at national level. We really need to put things in common and gather the data and pool the data so that regulators can monitor market abuse. We need to define the indicators to detect this market abuse. So these are two topics that again needs to be tackled at EU level. And then to answer your question regarding the rest of the world, what we have seen at the AMF is really that MiCA is the benchmark, actually. We have met many regulators from the UK, from Asia, even from the US, actually, coming to trying to understand how is MiCA drafted, what was the approach. And my sense is that actually MiCA is very positive in the sense that it brings clarity to the players. So, okay, it's a law, it's a framework, so it's rules, and it's sometimes very detailed rules, so it can be a constraint, but it gives clarity. So, like for example, in the US, I'm not sure that the fact that there were no rules was a good thing, because actually the players were caught up by the justice directly, and so it does not give clarity to business players. I think we need to give them clarity, and MiCA is doing that. So I would say that in my sense, MiCA seems to be a bit the example for the rest of the world, and I think we need to be just to think about the fact this is very positive.
Out of curiosity, because MiCA has some gray zones, I would say, so how we handle decentralization, for example, or NFTs to an extent, and we've seen then on a global level debates about decentralized finance or decentralization and other issues, or tokenization to an extent as well. When you look at that, and the IMF is part of this forum, right, of global regulators, do you think this is something that is being picked up, or is it something that rather drives it more towards we need more clarity on what we do with these topics that are somehow left out of MiCA to an extent?
Well, there is a reason why these topics were left out of MiCA. It's because when MiCA was being negotiated, was being drafted, it was too complicated to get in. We had a short time frame to draft MiCA. It was too complicated to deal with such a big issue like DeFi. It's not philosophy, but how do you apply rules when there is no one behind? So you have tried to draft rules, it did not make sense. So we said, I think we need to take time on DeFi and think about that as a second step. And this will come out, just like NFTs, DeFi, this lending, borrowing, these are the issues that are in MiCA in the reports part, saying that we need to draft report on that and we need to do something. And ISAs are working, so ESMA, EBA are working on that, so hopefully we will give some clarity in the future. But there were good reasons to leave this topic out of MiCA, but now we need to talk about that, and these are the perspectives also, talking about this type of topics.
Thanks for that. How can the industry support this type of efforts, right? Because what I often realize is like regulation is important, but then you have founders, for example. I mean, bigger companies have bigger structures, right? There's somebody in charge of regulation, policy, etc. But if you're a small founder in Europe and you realize, actually, I fall under MiCA, or I want to flag that my business model is somehow not covered or specific about something, how could those entities or founders, companies engage with the regulator? Is there a preferred way? Are there fora you would recommend, for example, where you say like, hey guys, this is your tackling point? What would you tell those innovators?
Well, at least for the AMF, the door is always open if a player wants to come and explain the issues, explain the business models. Our team, the digital finance innovation team, is really there also for that. So if you want to explain the issue, you want to explain the business model, you want to explain what is the issue with MiCA, please feel free to contact us. I think there is we have on our website, we have a page for that, so feel free to come. And I will encourage players to do that with other regulators also, because again, if we have this type of discussion at national level, at the end we will also talk about that at EU level, because the rules are being clarified at ESMA level.
So please guys, do that if you haven't done that or you were thinking about it. They're not afraid. You shouldn't be afraid, so go for it. We have 5 minutes left, and we actually wanted to give the audience a chance to ask any questions. So I don't know if anybody wants to ask one of our panelists or all the panelists a question. We have a micro. Anybody? Not all at once, please. No? So clear? Ah, there's one.
So can you tell us something about the timelines in different countries? Like how do you think it's going to play out? Who's ready? Who's not going to be ready? And when are we going to see like a big moment when everyone is finally ready? Because it's supposed to be a regulation. I was thinking that everyone will be ready from the 1st of January. And it seems like everyone is taking their time. So how do you see that playing out in time?
Well, it's true that there are differences in the transitional period between member states. I think there are not much we can do about that. Only perhaps, I think my view would be that we need to communicate to market players so that they are aware that there are these differences. What we are doing at ESMA level is trying to converge during this period. So that is to say that at least to have the same understanding of what it means, what this transitional period means for national players, so what they need to comply with. But there is not much we can do about that. We are aware that this is an issue because it leads to fragmentation. I think ESMA has invited member states to have the same 12 months period. Actually, just for example, in France, we already passed the law where we said it would be 18 months. So that's not a good thing. I agree with you. I think there is not much we can do except speak among member states, among authorities, trying to have the same understanding of what it means for players. But again, this is what it is. Feel free to let me know what you need for players to have this smooth transition to MiCA, so we can echo that to ESMA. But apart from communication on these differences, I'm not sure we can do much about these differences, and I agree with that. I understand the tricky part for players, especially where you want to have these passports, or you want, at least you are thinking about the Europe as the one market. It's true that it's not ideal, but feel free to let me know what you think would be helping the players regarding this situation. That is a fact.
I don't know if you want to comment, because...
No, maybe just to add to that I also echo these comments, and a very obvious observation that crypto is a very fast-moving, business. So even a difference in terms of 3, 6, 9 months from a go live can actually change the volumes and the liquidity and other things quite significantly from player to player, from country to country. So there might be some potential winners and losers just based on that.
Yeah, maybe also from my side, I think you're right that there's different countries and also regulators who have got varying degrees of readiness. And this is mainly due to the fact that I think some regulators already had the advantage of direct interactions with crypto asset companies, registration processes, and in other countries you didn't have that. Like in Italy, in Poland, it's tax authorities. It now moves to financial regulators who are pretty new to this, and they need to catch up. Also, it's a question of resources. I think some, I sometimes completely forget that financial services is much bigger than crypto assets, but there's also other areas that it needs to take care of, and different regulators have got different budgets for crypto assets, depending on the demand that they expect. I would just think about all these sorts of things when choosing the right home base within Europe, I guess. But we're trying to help all regulators to come up to speed with analytical capabilities, which I think are crucial, especially as an ex-regulator. I'm really passionate about bringing some data, statistics into the crypto asset space, which has previously, for a long time, been a very emotional topic, even for regulators, and decisions were made on, basically based on emotions. Now we've got data, and I really do hope that regulators use that capability.
We have time for one more question. I don't know if the audience has one. Otherwise, I will ask one. Sorry, there's one in the back.
Thank you. Quick question. Issuing a license is just one point of time. Is there a goal to have ability to monitor or overview the requirements level and the compliance level over time? Is there ability to do that?
I'm not sure I understood the question, sorry.
Can you repeat that? Sorry, I wasn't also very loud.
Yes, so from Chainalysis perspective, you are monitoring everything that is online, and you can see at the time of the chain abuse or any requirements abuse that something is going wrong, that the company is not anymore following the requirements of the MiCA, of the DORA, but the license is issuing like once at a time, and after that you're holding this license. Does regulators plan to have the monitoring abilities to understand where the requirements are abused?
So yeah, maybe I'll give a quick answer and then hand it over to you as the regulator. So from our perspective, I mean, you're right. The authorizations process is a point in time where all the requirements have to be met. But being licensed also means that you have to keep those requirements up, and you need to continue, fulfilling them on an ongoing basis. And that's a part of supervision. You can use essentially the same tools to do that. When you think about entities transacting on chain, you can have a snapshot at the point of authorization, but essentially you can do these checks around exposure to illicit activities, to sanctions, to terrorist financing on an ongoing level as well. We do have tools that screen entities and their interactions on-chain. You can even do that with assets now. Ecosystem monitoring, there's different names for it. But essentially, you look at the whole demographics, the whole distribution of one specific token, and that gives you a snapshot every single minute of how it is distributed, who the biggest holders are, who's interacting with it, the percentage of illicit activity happening on that specific asset or with that specific entity taking part of. So our systems don't just do a snapshot in one single point in time. You can do this continuously. You can even set alerts in systems. So if a regulator, for example, wants to follow a specific entity and say, if there is more than 1% or 0.0% of transactions going to sanctioned entities, give me an alert. All of this is possible. And this mimics roughly the systems that regulated, or MiCA regulated entities, hopefully soon, like Kraken and others will use to ensure that they have got a really good overview and awareness of their risk exposure.
And it's true that as regulator, we need to think about also how we collect the data in time. It's just not, you're right, authorization is the key part we are focusing right now, but it's true that once you are authorized in MiCA, you need to think about ongoing supervision, and we need, as you know, in MiCA there is no transaction reporting, for example, so we need to think about how we can collect the data without requiring new or imposing new requirements that are not in MiCA. Again, this is something we are talking about at ESMA level. I think perhaps relying on providers to get some data is one option. Then we need to think about how we can ask players to provide the information to the regulators so we can have this ongoing supervision. But yeah, of course, this would be a key part to make sure that we get the data to have this supervision. I think we have been doing that also in TradFi. So we need to think about this ongoing supervision in comparison to TradFi, only with the difference that it's true that in MiCA there is no ongoing requirements to report to the authorities.
I think on that note, I think we can end. MiCA is coming. You see there's a lot of things to be excited about. There's a lot of things that I think we still need to work on together. So help us engage. And I think in the course of the today and tomorrow, you will see there is a number of elements where there's a lot of excitement, hopefully, coming through MiCA on a number of issues. But it also means that this process is an evolution, right? So this is not like the end. This is something that can be improved, should be improved. And I think over time, regulators and the industry will find its tune, right? Because there's a timing discrepancy. Regulators tend to think long-term. The industry rushes and runs, like all the tech industries. And I think there's time for a better mutual understanding in this regard. So if you have time to talk to your regulator or to the Commission, or even MEPs who are the co-legislators on anything that will be changed or done in the future, then please do so. Hopefully you can engage with them also here. And I want to thank the panel for taking the time. It was a great discussion. And I will hand over to our MC now, who will guide you through the rest of the day. Thank you.